Welcome to BibleStudyOffer.com. My name is Ariel. I'm so glad you decided to take a look at this material. You may be here because someone shared one of these with you, and I'm glad you decided to check it out. We are looking at lesson number 1, Can God Be Trusted? Let's dive right in. The lesson begins with an illustration in regards to trust. And trust is a big issue, especially as of late. You may be familiar with these individuals. They have disappointed tons of people, thousands of people, because trust was broken. Promises were made of great financial gain and then nothing, actually tremendous losses, millions of dollars. You may be familiar with some of these individuals that have also broken trust at one time in their lives, and it has hurt many people. And you may be familiar with this last group of individuals. The one in the far left corner, Dr. Rabbi Zacharias. I've had several books of his. I've listened to many of his lectures, and it was very painful to discover some of the things that took place throughout his life that came to be known or came to light after his passing away. And so it's discouraging, and it hurts us when trust is broken. And of course, this last group, I've saved it because these individuals represent not just themselves, but they are representatives of or they claim to be representatives of God. And so they may have contributed to the distrust that we have across the board of people doubting God's existence. And if they are willing to consider God's existence, they're not quite sure what to make of his character. The Bible will provide for us some orientation. In this initial study, we will tackle this issue of trust and what does God offer to help restore that trust? What are some of the things that he provides for humanity to use their intellect, to use their reason, to reconsider, or at least take a look at and evaluate some of these evidences that he provides. And the first one we're going to look at, it answers the question, how does God demonstrate that he can be trusted? Isaiah 46 verses 9 and 10 says, "Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things that are not yet done." Now that's, of course, translation from some idiomatic expressions, but in essence, it's saying this is my evidence. I'm going to give you information about things that are going to happen before they do. Now, this has a specific theological word for it, and it's called prophecy. But there's various ideas of what prophecy is. Prophecy is not fortune telling. Prophecy is evidence, not demonstration. So prophecy, one of the components that brings with it as well, it is part of the evidence, is not simply just God predicting things. Innately in those predictions of future events are two principles that are inseparable and always present in all prophecies. Divine prophecy presents universal principles of ethics and morals. And many people don't recognize that. They get fixated on, well, if God said this, did it happen? I need evidence or demonstration that what he said happened. Well, there's more to it than just did God predict something and did it occur? Of course, there's evidence, archaeological evidence that we will look at throughout these studies that will seem to demonstrate that yes, there's evidence, sufficient evidence from history and archaeology that many of the prophecies in the Bible came true, were fulfilled. And you said many, not all? Well, there are still some that have yet to be fulfilled, and we will look at some of that in this study. But all prophecy also presents ethical and moral principles. We're going to look at one of the prophecies in the Bible that, for me at least, best it demonstrates and give examples of these principles. The principle of evidence and the principle of ethics and morals. Daniel 2:1 says, "Now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him." Surface reading, you say, oh, big deal. Someone has a dream. As we look at this chapter, we will see that it was not just any dream. In fact, God gave this dream to Nebuchadnezzar. And here is where the ethical component of prophecy begins to be revealed. God does not reveal this prophetic revelation to a Jewish leader, but to a pagan king. And you may think, well, big deal. It is a big deal, and definitely it was a big deal for the individuals back then, those that felt like they were God's people, the only ones that God could communicate or wanted to communicate or have any kind of relationships. And God right off the bat says, I'm not going to give anything to you guys. I'm going to give this dream to a pagan, idol worshiping king. That is huge. And what that begins to reveal is this component of ethics that the Bible presents, prophecy presents. It begins to paint a picture of God that, though yes, God can interact or choose to reveal himself to a specific group of people, that revelation was never, I only like you. But you need to let the rest of the human family know that I care for all of you. And that is one of the strong ethical components of prophecy, and it's right there in the very first verse in Daniel chapter 2 regarding this prophetic revelation that we're going to look at. God has no favorites. God values and cares for all humans equally. The problem has never been with God. The problem has been with those individuals that claim to be God's people. Eventually, they begin to adopt an idea or start developing feelings that they are the only ones that God loves. God loves everyone, though not everyone loves him. What prophecy reveals is that he loves every human being, including idol-worshiping pagan kings. So we're going to go into question number 3. What was Nebuchadnezzar's reaction when his counselors could not interpret this dream? He had a dream. He recognized he was significant. And in that time and culture, dreams were interpreted as revelations from the gods. And so King Nebuchadnezzar definitely wanted to know, was this from God? And if it was, or the gods, and if it was, what does it mean? Daniel 2:10 says, the Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Daniel 2:12, for this reason the king was angry and very furious and gave command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Like I said, if you and I were just looking at this and doing a surface reading, it would seem like this king is quite fickle and moody. But that's not the case. Kings were often on guard from being poisoned, betrayed. Other people wanted to have their power and their authority. And King Nebuchadnezzar had worked long and hard to achieve what he had accomplished. And he wasn't about to just give it up to any schmojo that wanted to knock him off. And so he was super tense when he had this dream. Are the gods trying to warn me of something? And then when the people that he was paying to do this kind of job are refusing to reveal this to him, he became very suspicious. These individuals were able to hone in their craft so that it satisfied demonstration, bypassing evidence. There's a vast difference between these two. And all along, these Chaldeans, astrologers, etc., were providing demonstration after demonstration that seemed to satisfy Nebuchadnezzar's curiosity for the unknown, the future. But now these individuals were revealed for what they were. Now the God of heaven was giving evidence, and demonstration could no longer suffice. So demonstration, let's explore that for just a bit. I began to look at the Chaldeans and began to realize that there's a lineage of this practice. Today, of course, we have magicians. Some of them are just about, can you see the pebble and then it disappears, etc. But behind this practice stands something much deeper that it goes back down to the times of Babylon. The magician, they were all about demonstration. They did not want you to have, they did not need you to have faith, because what they would do was to demonstrate or give you these acts or experiences that bypass faith, went straight into your senses, and then through your senses, you were led to believe that what was before you was reality. And of course, you and I know that our senses are not as reliable as we might think they are. Talk to any individual or watch YouTube videos in regards to individuals that practice magic, and they will tell you, we do things so fast, or we distract your senses over here by doing something over here with my hand, while with this hand, I'm doing something else. It is through our senses that demonstrations are given. And of course, it opens us up for deception. On the other hand, evidence we cannot be manipulated by evidence. Evidence doesn't seek to manipulate to begin with either. What evidence wants to engage is not our senses, but our rational thinking capabilities. Now, you may recognize the individual in the picture. He is revered by the magicians around the globe. And of course, is Harry Houdini, who demonstrated tremendous acts and feats that wowed the world, and he's known worldwide. But something happened in his life that caused him to recognize the difference between demonstration, which is what he was doing, that's how he made his money. But all of a sudden, something happened in his life in which he was seeking for evidence. It was the death of his mother. And in this book that he wrote, A Magician Among the Spirits, he chronicles how when his mother died, whom he loved dearly, it provoked him, it compelled him to start looking for ways to communicate with her. And so he began to look at individuals that claimed to be able to speak with the dead. And time again, he would debunk them. He would expose them as frauds because all they were trying to do is provide demonstration to the senses. And what Houdini wanted was something that intellectually, emotionally could reconnect him with his mother. So this is huge. And you and I may have never realized how much we actually go for demonstration over evidence. And many times, because evidence does not seem to cater to our senses, we dismiss it. But prophecy appeals to us. Prophecy doesn't want you to just use your emotions or your senses as the means to guide you and evaluate whether something is true or not. Prophecy wants to provide evidence that will engage your mind, your reason, your ability to think. Question number 4. What did Daniel do? Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning the secret. And God answers this prayer by giving the same dream to Daniel. Now, we begin to see here something about prophecy that begins to counteract. It actually is countercultural back then and even now. The Greeks saw God as an unmovable, unaffected being, completely and totally outside of our reach, of our existence. He could not communicate with us, and we cannot communicate with him. Something very similar to what the Chaldeans said to the king. There's not a man that can reveal this to you except the gods, but they don't dwell with us. Now, prophecy reveals something completely different. Prophecy reveals that, number one, the prophecy is coming from God, and he can enter into our experience. He can reason and communicate with us. But specifically, this prophecy also highlights the fact that prophecy is not just about God communicating to us, but that at least the God of these prophecies, the one that reveals these prophecies, he can also hear us. He actually encourages us to communicate with him, and he hears us individually, personally. That is tremendously encouraging, and it provides now some footwork for the upcoming lessons that we will have, in that prophecy will begin to reveal that what is revealed about God is that he wants to appeal to our intelligence. He doesn't really want to wow our senses, and furthermore, he wants to satisfy emotional longing for connection. He communicates to us, and we can communicate with him. Now, this idea of praying, some of us may be quite familiar with that and doing quite well in that discipline of prayer, but some of us may be wondering, I'm not sure how to go about it. It's up and down, here and there, everywhere. And maybe you want a little bit more orientation. Well, you can comment on the section below, and I'll do my best to answer you. You can also reach out to me via WhatsApp. Also, this is a resource that I want to make available for you. You and I could have a virtual one-on-one in which you can ask the questions regarding prayer or other questions you may have related to the lesson or about prophecy. And I'll be happy to hear your questions and explore the answers from the Bible. I want to put that out there for you as an additional resource to this material. Question number 5. How did Daniel describe the king's dream? You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This, of course, again, for me, for many years I read this, and it wasn't until I began to explore deeper into pagan culture that I realized God is not using Hebrew language. He's not using Torah. He's not using sanctuary or all these well-familiar symbols within the Jewish culture. He's talking to a pagan king in his language, and he's meeting him where he is at. That is an encouraging revelation of God, that he doesn't say to us, you will never understand me until you can reach this level. Rather, God comes down to where we are at and speak to us at that level. That is, to me, very significant, very meaningful. Again, revealing the ethical component of prophecy. God speaks to each of us by means we can understand. In fact, because we read in English Bibles, you and I may not know this, but Daniel chapter 2 through 7 are written in Aramaic. You and I don't speak that today, but we speak something very similar to that in this context. Aramaic was the universal language of the nations in that part of the world for commerce. Everyone spoke Aramaic, much like a lot of the world, or much of the world, speaks English. I've traveled through Lebanon, Turkey, Germany, South America, and I've always found people that speak English. Not many people speak Urdu, not many people speak German, or Arabic, but English. You are very likely to find someone that speaks English somewhere in this globe. And that's what Aramaic was. And God intentionally gave this prophecy and the next ones in a language that will be accessible to pagans, to non-Jews, demonstrating God's desire to be known and understood by all peoples, not just a few. Question number 6. What were the elements that made up this image? This image head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Now, an image was not very unique for Nebuchadnezzar, but it had multiple metals, and there were details in this dream that definitely caught his attention. We will look at those in just a little bit. But as Daniel is describing this to Nebuchadnezzar, he is not cutting a bull in half, looking at the liver, or anything like that, wow, the senses. He went prayed, God gave him the vision, and now Daniel is verbally repeating Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and his memory and his reason and his intellect are being engaged, and Nebuchadnezzar is receiving this as evidence that the God of this pagan, this Jewish captive, is a God that is communicating to him, and he better pay attention. The dream was exactly as he had it. Question number 7. What happened to this great image? You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. That's the entirety of the dream. Nebuchadnezzar is blown away. None of his astrologers that kept giving him demonstrations for years could provide him the evidence that he needed. Now this Hebrew captive is providing for him the dream, and in a bit he's going to provide the interpretation. But let's pause here for a second. We've been talking about this ethical component of prophecy. Here we have the king, here we have a captive, and what prophecy has done is, yes, God has given this dream to a pagan king, but this pagan king is going to have to listen to and give credence to a Hebrew captive. This is humongous because this Hebrew captive has a God. Babylon has tons of gods. Nebuchadnezzar worships many gods. Yet, though he thinks that his gods have given him victory over the Jewish God seems to be sticking around, and he is now speaking to Nebuchadnezzar, and he is revealing to Nebuchadnezzar things that none of his gods have been able to reveal in the future. This is God's way of equalizing, in that to the Jewish people, he's saying, look, I don't need you to reveal myself or the future. I can choose a pagan king. And to a pagan king, he's saying, all of your gods are phonies. I'm the real God, and I'm giving you evidence of my existence and my capacities and my abilities. Like we read in the first verse, I am telling you things that are going to happen before they happen, not just simply for you to know things, but for you to come to know who I am and to bring a little bit of ethics and morality. Don't mistreat humans. Don't see humans as less than you. When we come into the presence of God through prophecy, all humans become equal in value. There are not humans that are more valuable because of education, power, or wealth, or any other social status that we can ascribe. And there are no humans with no value or no inherent worth. All humans are of equal value to God, whether pagan or Jewish. Question number 8. What does the head of gold represent? Daniel 2:38. You are this head of gold. Pretty simple. Babylon was going to be the starting piece of this puzzle of prophecy. And it's fit because if you go to the museum in Berlin, I believe, is where you can see the Ishtar Gate, and it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and it's a small sample of the wealth and opulence that governed Babylon. And so gold was a fitting symbol for that kingdom. Question number 9. What did Daniel predict would happen to Babylon? But after you, and Nebuchadnezzar didn't like that part, shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. And he definitely didn't like that next part. And it wasn't God saying someone more powerful and mighty. This is humbling. This is part of the ethical aspect of humanity, prophecy, in that it seeks to bring humanity down from the high places we place ourselves because of inherent wealth or looks or whatever it is that is shallow and non-lasting, that gives us a false sense of superiority. Through prophecy, God wants to chop that down and bring us down to the level we ought to be. We are humans, and everyone else is human too. So it would be an inferior kingdom, not a superior one, that would conquer Babylon. And that was a bitter pill for Nebuchadnezzar to stomach, to swallow. An inferior beast beats the superior. An inferior kingdom beats a superior kingdom. King Nebuchadnezzar was shocked that it was not a mightier kingdom that would overthrow Babylon, but an inferior one, the Medo-Persian. And we will explore the reasons behind this in future lessons. Question number 10. What metal was used to represent the third kingdom, the nation that would take over Medo-Persia? A third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. Now I'm moving through this and a bit fast because we will revisit all of this in a future lesson. And actually, in the book of Daniel, these kingdoms are mentioned by name. So I'm not just pulling these out of the thin air. The book of Daniel actually cohesively gives you the rest of these kingdoms by name, so you're not left guessing. Greece's brazen reach. The Medes and the Persians were conquered by the rapidly expanding Grecian kingdom. Their most notable leader was Alexander the Great, and a Jewish historian named Josephus mentions Alexander being shown Greece's conquest in Daniel's prophecies. Now, I'm going to share with you a resource that you can check out. There's a website called the Gutenberg Project, which takes books that are out of copyright and makes them available for free digitally. And there is a Jewish historian that is mentioned here, Josephus, and he wrote a book, and it's called Antiquities. And if you go to book number 11, XI, chapter 8, paragraph 5, you will see little numbers that separate each paragraph. You go there, you will read about when the high priest approached Alexander the Great and showed him the prophecies of Daniel, in Daniel, and how Greece is mentioned by name, and that Alexander the Great is fulfilling prophecy to go in confidence that he will be able to conquer the then known world. Because of that prophecy, Alexander the Great left Jerusalem alone. He liked that their God was on his side. So there's historical evidence that, for me, provides sufficient evidence, material, for you to use intellect and reason and wonder and begin to consider, is this sufficient that I can believe? Is this sufficient that I can trust God? I hope that you're beginning to see that there is sufficient evidence that we can, in fact, trust God. Question number 11. What metal was used to represent the fourth kingdom? Daniel 2:40. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron. And go to any encyclopedia and you will discover that Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Rome was that empire that overtook the Grecian Empire. And though it did overcome Greece, Greece stuck around. And we'll talk more about the philosophies of Greek origin that stuck around for centuries, even to our days. And they still affect much of our thinking and especially a lot of our theology. Question number 12. How was the breakup of the Roman Empire described in this prophecy? Whereas you saw the feet and toes partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. So the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. Now something happens here. It has metal, 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 but then a transition takes place. If I was making stuff up, it would have been metal, 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 metal. But God reveals and gives evidence that he sees the future, and he recognizes that there would not be an empire, that a single ginormous empire that would be able to conquer Rome. Rome would fragment and other Germanic tribes will be able to nibble at it, but it would not be conquered. It would fragment from within. And the pattern comes at the right time in history. This is part of the evidence provided by God for us to evaluate and conclude our possibility to trust in him, to trust him. Question number 13. Could a secular Roman Empire ever exist again? As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of man, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. And history fits this description to a T, because Europe began to recognize, man, we were way more powerful when we were united. Let's try to unite ourselves and let's use marriage to do that. Marriage is not the best way to unite worlds, kingdoms, and empires. Many times it backfires, and it did. Though at first it looked like they were united, at least on paper, it looked like the daughter of Portugal, the kings of Portugal, and the son of Spain and Germany, etc. They were all getting intermarried, and their sons and grandsons and cousins. The human heart loves power, and everyone wants to be at the top, like Nebuchadnezzar. And eventually, all of that undoes our efforts for unification. And though Europe appeared to have been united for a period of time, it was always fragmented and never really united, especially not through marriage. Other individuals tried as well, Charles the Great, Napoleon, Hitler, and others, all failing, appearing that they were going to be able to finally accomplish this. But this prophecy says that they will never become united. And we think Euro and things like that, but you know how you have Brexit. Europe has certainly tried and is still trying to become a unified force. But the Bible says that they will not unite. And to this day, geographically, you have evidence that this prophecy has proven true so far, something that we can use our reason and intellect to consider. Question number 14. Who will set up history's final kingdom? Daniel 2:44. And in the days of these kings, in the days of Europe, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Remember that it switched, and you have this big rock that comes down. It's God's megalith. It is not simply God taking over, though. This is not God sending a divine nuclear bomb and poof, everything's done. That is not what that rock symbolizes. This is the moral aspect of prophecy. This points to a day when all the exploitations, abuses, damages, etc., 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 that we have experienced in this planet for millennia, all of these things will be done away with. It will no longer be part of the human experience, and God will hold accountable those individuals that we saw at the beginning of this study that have stiffed people financially, lied to people politically, but most of all, those that misrepresented him religiously. This is the moral component of prophecy, and as you can guess, we can maybe stomach a little bit the ethical, but the moral one really confronts us in that someone's going to hold me accountable to when I abuse and take advantage of other human beings and treat them as beneath being human. Question number 15. What will happen to earthly kingdoms when God sets up his kingdom? It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms. All kingdoms and governments on this planet have abused their power, all of them, no exceptions. They have deprived the poor and weak while protecting and enriching the poor. Can you name a few governments and countries that do this? I think all of them, right? But God's kingdom will bring a day of justice and account to all humanity. God will hold all humans equal. Remember that equalizing component of prophecy? For God, there will not be presidents, emperors, or anything like that. It will just be human. And what kind of human were you? Were you embracing ethical principles? Were you practicing moral principles? That is what will matter in the end. And this is one of the strong components that embody prophecy, divine prophecy from the Bible. Question 16. What did Nebuchadnezzar say about Daniel's God when he realized that Daniel could reveal the meaning of the dream? Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets. We're back to where we began. Evidence versus demonstration. Prophecy is not designed to entertain. It's not for the curious. We may demand a demonstration, but that seldom has led our faith to an intelligent and reasonable form of belief. God offers evidence that can be verified so that each can make their own judgment regarding God's existence and trustworthiness. And I hope that this initial study has provided for you at least material to consider, to explore and research, because God wants you to use your mind, your reason, and your intellect. He doesn't want to be a magician trying to fool your senses into believing him. He wants to use the capacities he has given you to evaluate his evidence and consider, is God worthy of my trust? So we have concluded lesson number 1. I'm excited that you stuck around. I invite you to consider, look at lesson number 2 on this channel, Seeing the Signs. We will explore a little bit more about this. And like I said, Please subscribe so when these episodes get uploaded, you will be notified. Please comment below questions you may have, things that have helped you, things that could be done better. And also, let me remind you, you can reach me via WhatsApp, but you can also ask or request for one-on-one virtual meetings where you and I can hear your questions and we can explore the answers from the Bible. I hope to see you in lesson number 2.